بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين وبعد. Jazakumullah khairan everybody for coming out tonight. It is my absolute honor and pleasure to be here. Myself and Sister Maryam, who will be coming up shortly, inshallah. So we're here on behalf of the Family and Youth Institute, the FYI as we call it. So for tonight, so we have a full day workshop tomorrow called Before You Say I Do, which is targeted towards young people who are looking to get married. And inshallah, my plan for tonight, what I was asked to do was, I'll give a short introduction to the organization itself, who we are, what we do, and why we do what we do. And then I'll give you an overview of the program itself for tomorrow so you understand the actual workshop that we'll be engaging in, inshallah. So that's a plan, and if you have any questions, feel free to ask me, inshallah. So the FYI is a national research and education institute that focuses on the Muslim mental health and family wellness. It has a very specific focus to try and help our Muslim community increase its understanding and its usage of some of the tools that are at our disposal, but we sometimes don't always utilize. We aim to strengthen and empower individuals and families, communities through mental health research and education. The question you probably want to ask is, why the FYI? Right? Over the last 10 years, the organization has been around for about 10 years now, alhamdulillah. And over the last 10 years, we've produced a wealth of resources. And I'm specifically sharing this with you because most and all of these resources are on our website, freely accessible to everyone. And I would really encourage everybody to take a look at some of the resources that are available, and I'll walk you through some of them today, inshallah. When we're addressing issues and challenges that are facing the community, there are two different approaches you can take. You can take the public health model, or you can take the medical model.
Can you ask the sisters to take the children who are making noise outside? Assalamu alaikum, sisters. If you have kids who are not comfortable, you can take them outside, take them to the gym or the play area. I don't know if it's raining, but they're creating disturbance over here. Jazakumullah khairan.
So there are two models that we can use to research and understand and address issues, both of which are important. So the medical model that many of us might be familiar with is you look at every single individual, look at their specific circumstance, look at what is individually happening to them, and try to come up with a solution that is specific to them. But that takes one person at a time. The public health model is a large-scale model that looks at the community at large and says, what can we do to try and address an issue for the community at large? So you take the pandemic as an example. Yes, there are the specific things that each and every one of us has to do, but the general solution has been a public health model that we all should be wearing face masks, we should be getting vaccinated. Initially we were distancing. Those are public health measures done on a large scale because they prevent the disease from spreading. And so the public health model is usually focused on prevention rather than cure. There's some cure, but mostly prevention. The medical model goes to, well, something happened, now we got to look at it. So the FYI follows the public health model. We're looking at the community at large. What can we do to prevent issues from happening to begin with? What can we do generally as a community? What can we do generally as a society to help address the issues? And so how do we do this? We strengthen individuals, families, and communities. We produce these resources. And with those resources in hand, because we don't want to be theoretical, we want to be very practical. With those resources in hand, you ignite community-wide change. People can implement in their own families, in their schools, in the masjid, at work, generally at large. And that then helps to prevent and intervene with some of the issues that are there. How do we do that? We integrate a developmental approach for all ages. So we have something called the Infant Mental Health Toolkit. So for those with very young children, we sometimes don't recognize that our brain is developing the fastest at the youngest age. And mental health is being impacted from a very young age. How can we help our young babies, our toddlers, develop in that positive fashion? So there's that Infant Mental Health Toolkit. And you go to the very other extreme of the elders. There's an elder care toolkit. What happens post-retirement? What are the issues and challenges that happen for the caretakers, for the elders themselves, and everything in between? So from infancy to elderly, we've got resources there. And what this would do is we hope it'll reduce the stigma and increase mental health awareness, promote resources, and it ultimately creates enabling environments. Your home, your school, your masjid, your work, whatever the case might be. We want to enable a positive environment where people can flourish and develop and grow. You take one example of how complicated this might be. So I've talked about, theoretically how this would work, and I apologize, the colors are not coming out. It looks really pretty on my screen, but it's not coming out that well. But that's okay. I'll explain this, and hopefully it comes out, inshallah. So you take youth development, right? So one of our core areas of work is youth development. What are the factors that impact a youth in their development process? So you've got the child, you've got the parent, the interaction between the child and the parent, and the parents themselves are not living in isolation. There's a marriage atmosphere, if you will, or an environment at home that's taking place. There's a social network that the child's engaged in, that the family's also engaged in. There's a school network that the child attends and is engaged in. The parents might be involved in the work network. Whatever happens at work impacts the life at home. You have to take all of these different considerations into account to understand what are the challenges that the youth is facing. It's not just what appears on the surface, that there is a simple issue. There are a lot of underlying complicated interactions that are taking place that impact the development of the young person's mind. And with all of these factors, you don't see this, but there's an arrow going through this, representing time, that over time, these factors change and they fluctuate. And so you cannot just do an analysis at one point in time. It's not static. It has to be dynamic. You have to continuously be looking at, well, you're 5 years old, you're 10 years old, you're 15 years old, you're 20 years old. How you interact with each one of these circles changes, and how it impacts you changes. And so our solution, when we talk about challenges facing youth, can also not be static. It has to be dynamic, and it has to address things as they appear. So how do we go about doing this? We have something called a theory of change. We start off by identifying issues. What is the problem? Either we can identify as researchers, we're a national organization, we can take a look and see what's going on, or the community can come up and say, hey, we're facing these challenges here. Can you help us address these challenges? So we'll listen to all of this, try to understand what those issues are, and if it truly is a deeper issue, because sometimes it can be very specific to a particular time or place or a person. But if it's a deeper issue, we'll engage in research to try and find out from an academic perspective, what are the different factors that impact this particular issue? We'll engage in behavioral research to understand the factors that are contributing to the particular problem. Once you've done the research, okay, that's great. But what's the solution? The community raised the problem so they could get an answer, so they could implement. So we have to find solutions that work. We've identified what the problem is. We have understood what are the factors that impact that problem. But then we got to find a solution so that people can actually implement. So we identify actions and changes that can be implemented. Well, identifying them is not enough. Then you have to present them to the community. And that's resource development in the form of infographics, videos, lectures, workshops, you have to get that information to the community so they can utilize it. And once they have it in their hand, hopefully they can implement. And once they implement it, we can go back and analyze and see, did it have the impact that we wanted? Or did it not make an effect, a change that we wanted, right? So this is sort of the whole cycle of how we go about doing it. I'm trying to present to you this a very systematic process of approaching the issues. It's not just a random thing that, oh, I did this for 5 years, let me make a workshop out of it. It's a very systematic, research-based process that we engage in. So you may have seen some of these. If not, I encourage you to go to our website, thefyi.org. We create some very nice infographics, which is sort of a graphical format, and it summarizes the issue at hand. And we're not afraid to challenge, we're not afraid to take on challenging topics, as long as those are topics that the community is actually facing. So divorce, I'll talk a little bit about later, but divorce rate within the Muslim community is 50%, as we hear often. What are the causes of that divorce? I mean, nobody gets married with the aim of getting divorced, but people still get divorced. Why? So we did some research, we found out there are some reasons, we summarized this. And hopefully with that summary, people can take and understand and implement, say, all right, if these are the causes, I want to address these before it becomes a problem for me. Engaging in sex outside of marriage. It's a taboo topic at times. But when you understand what's actually happening on the ground, especially with a lot of young people, you understand that's a big issue. There are a lot of young people who are engaging in this, whether we talk about it or not. What can we do about it? Substance use, tobacco, hookah, other types of substances. So we've got these infographics that summarize the problem with a lot of data that tells you who's doing what. But one infographic is not enough. Sometimes you need a lot more detail. And the details come through in what we call toolkits. Again, all of these are on our website. You can easily, freely go access that. So I'll give you an example of an issue that was brought to us. Suicide. Suicide amongst Muslim youth. It's increasing, it's a problem, it's a challenge. But when we started looking at this issue, there were very few, if any, resources available for the Muslim community. Many of the imams would simply say it's haram, suicide's haram. Okay, understood, it's haram. But what do I do about it when somebody is having suicidal thoughts? Can I help in any way? Can I intervene? What happens if somebody passes away? What do I do with all of this? It's a reality on the ground. I can't just say, don't deal with it. And so we worked with scholars, we worked on our behavioral research team, et cetera, come up with this suicide prevention toolkit. That if somebody is having suicidal thoughts and ideas, what can you do to help? I mean, ultimately, at some level, you have to go to professionals. But before that, what can you do to intervene, to help and reduce some of the challenges? And similarly with some of these other topics. Digital parenting. In this age when young people are growing up, they're using social media, they're online all the time. How do you handle that from a parenting perspective? It's very, very challenging. So there's a digital parenting toolkit. Grief support. When somebody passes away, how do you deal with that? There's a lot of emotions that we go through. And sometimes we don't know how to handle all of those emotions. Sometimes we think it's wrong to have emotions. Oh, somebody passed away, 3 days have passed, end of story. Your emotions, turn them off. It's like an off-on switch. It doesn't work that way. So how do you support somebody, especially if it was a tragic accident or, God forbid, it was something else like an attack on the center or some terrorism event or something different? How do you handle those situations? And so on and so forth. So there's a lot of toolkits on very specialized topics that are available. We also have these short videos. You can go on our website, 5-6 minute videos that summarize a lot of the topics and give you changes. Like the infographics would summarize the problem. Videos are what would summarize the solution for you, inshallah. And then, of course, workshops and webinars that we help. And then once you come and give a workshop or a lecture, you want people to continue to benefit. It's not a one-time deal. So we have continuing education resources. We continuously put out reports, articles, But for most of you guys, I would suggest you join our email list. Every day, Monday to Friday, we send one email out a day. Just one email because everybody's busy. But one article a day so that little by little we can learn on different topics and improve ourselves and inshallah improve our community. So I encourage you to follow us, join the email list or on social media as you wish. Tomorrow particularly we'll be doing this full workshop for young folks, right? And I think as parents you might be attending. What will they be learning tomorrow? What is it that I can take away from this? So the workshop is before you say I do. The goal of the workshop, or one of the goals that we're engaging in, is to educate young people about marriage. Marriage is not some magical thing that you just walk into and everything will be okay by itself. I'll come back to that. You actually have to prepare for it. Just as you prepare for college, just as you prepare for your career, you prepare for anything else. If this is going to be the rest of your life, then you need to be able to prepare for it. How you're going to prepare, here are some guidelines. Let me play this video. Let's see if it works.
With reports of unhappy marriages and a rising divorce rate among American Muslim couples, how can you decrease the likelihood of becoming another statistic? 1. Know yourself before marriage. Why do you want to get married? And are you ready to get married? Understand your personality, communication style, values, unresolved issues, and expectations. Identify characteristics you're looking for in a partner. This will help you find a good fit for you. 2. Do your homework. Address issues before becoming emotionally involved. Ask difficult questions and conduct background checks. Do not confuse chemistry with compatibility. Pay attention to red flags. 3. Discuss everything. Your goals and priorities. Where do you see yourself in 5 years, 10 years? And how does work and family fit into your future plans? 4. Go to premarital counseling before announcing your engagement. A counselor will help you explore compatibility, identify challenges, and teach communication and conflict resolution skills. 5. In-laws. How much time do you spend with your family now? How much do you expect to spend with them once you're married, once you have children, and when they are old? 6. Conflict resolution. Understand that arguments are inevitable. It's how couples handle them that determines whether they'll get through the fights. Learn how to identify underlying issues and talk about what's bothering you. Remember, you can only control your actions, not your spouse's. 7. Continuing education. Many people romanticize about marriage. Be realistic and educate yourself about the phases of marriage, common challenges and skills that will set your marriage up for success. So how can you learn more about strengthening your marriage? At the Family and Youth Institute, we specialize in providing practical, research-based marriage education. Whether you are considering marriage, engaged, married, or divorced, we have resources for you.
So that was an example of a video, but it summarizes the whole topic and what are the challenges that you'd face and in very simple, short ways, the topics that you should be considering. So that's what we're going to be talking about tomorrow, inshallah. We want to understand why it is important to prepare for marriage, learn how to prepare for marriage, and then identify specific resources that can actually be utilized to prepare for marriage. You don't, again, goal is not to have a theoretical topic, but practically, how can you use this in your lives, inshallah? First thing, we plan extensively for the wedding. But the wedding is just one day, not even a day sometimes, just a few hours. But we plan for it like there's no tomorrow. And we spend an immense amount of money on that wedding day. In 2019, the average wedding cost, which is just the wedding day itself, not honeymoon, etc., in the United States was $33,900. This is the general American wedding. So this is not just the Muslim community. Because the average number of guests is 131, which for many Muslim families, that's like what, my 5 cousins and their families coming together, right? So our weddings tend to be much larger. Our costs may be much larger as well. And yet, for a few hours, we do this. What happens the day after? What happens the day after? Have we planned for that? What are our expectations about marriage? So today I'm just going to highlight sort of the title slides, but tomorrow we'll go into some detail about what are our expectations of marriage, before, during, after, and we'll do different activities about marriage, inshallah. I'm not going to play this video. And as I mentioned earlier, divorce in America is very common, and the Muslim community is not immune to that. We have different divorce rates according to different studies. You got that 50% number, 32%, something in between, depending on the time scale, depending on the methodology. But regardless, divorce rates are really high. Our goal in getting married is not to get divorced. Now, don't misunderstand, divorce is not like the end of the world. There is a legitimate reason to get divorced. At times, you should get divorced, because that is the right course of action to do. And that's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made it halal. But that's not the goal that we start off with, right? And so, what is our goal? We want more positive things. We want to understand why divorce happens. So this is one of the infographics that I'd shown. I've blown it up a little bit. What are the top 5 reasons that Muslim couples, Muslims in America, what do they argue about? And those arguments over time can lead to divorce. On the female side, let's see if my mouse, oh, there you go. The top argument for both males and females is in-laws. They argue about the roles about in-laws. Finances is high on the list. Different interests, what they actually want to do. And that you might think is surprising. Like, when you're getting married, you're talking to somebody, or you hope you're talking to somebody, and you're talking about common interests. But yet, after marriage, you find out, wait a second, our interests are actually different. And they list different interests as one of the top reasons for getting a divorce. Spending time together, family and friends. Imagine your family or your friends would be something that brings you together. But if you've not adequately explored that issue, it can be something that splits you apart. That's a challenge. 80% of those who were divorced did not participate in any formal premarital education. And yet, we have found over and over again through research that those who do engage in premarital education have a much lower divorce rate, because they've gone through a much deeper process of exploration. So right here at the bottom, it says here, 90% of couples who completed premarital education were less likely to divorce. So premarital education works, and we highly encourage everybody to go through that. Talked about that. So then the next topic is, how do you prepare yourself for marriage? How do you get into that mindset of, I'm going to be getting married? Preparing for marriage has 2 parts, we'll talk about that, but marriage prep is what we're going to be talking about tomorrow. Before you're engaged, it's information to help you achieve a long-lasting and happy and healthy marriage. And you do that through reading books, articles, taking this type of workshop. Detailed counseling, premarital education, is once you're interested in getting married, perhaps just at the time of engagement or before engagement, you meet with a counselor and you assess your readiness. You explore deeper issues of compatibility. Should have done some of this on your own, but sometimes on our own we are shy to raise certain questions. You need a third party to come in and ask some hard questions. Hey, did you consider this? And force it on you. Say, no, you need to answer this question. You can't just brush it aside. Sometimes, we're so much in love that the hormones kick in, and we look at everything with rose-colored glasses. You see challenges, you see issues, and you're like, it's okay, I'll deal with it. I'll overcome it. She'll change, he'll change. will do things differently. But you need that third person sometimes to look at it and say, no, 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 this is a big deal. You guys really need to discuss this topic and hash it out. You have some compatibility issues here. I see some major red flags which may cause problems down the road. So going through a proper course, understanding what the challenges and the issues are, working with a counselor at some level is very, very helpful in teasing out each and every one of these issues. So how do you prepare for marriage? 2 key tasks. 1, get to know yourself, and 2, get to know your partner. 2 very basic tasks. Sounds simple, but how do you get to know yourself? We'll use the clothing analogy that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala uses, and if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has used that analogy, you know there's a lot of depth to it. So we'll talk about this more in depth tomorrow, but when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, "Hunna libasul lakum wa antum libasul lahun," that they are a garment for you and you are a garment for them. What does a garment do? What are the functions of a garment? We'll try and explore this tomorrow. And then relate that to marriage. Like, what are the functions of each one of the partners? How do they engage? How do they interact with each other? Again, I'm simply giving you an overview today, but tomorrow we'll go into each one of these in depth and talk about how to actually utilize these tools for ourselves, inshallah. So knowing yourself is a whole exercise. It's examining yourself, understanding myself, becoming aware of who I really am, and taking a deep look. It's not simply a matter of, I want to marry a good Muslim. Okay. Define good. Define Muslim. Define who you are that matches that definition of good. I'm not here to tell you what a good Muslim is. I'm simply going to raise a lot of questions and ask you to answer those questions, because everybody's got a different definition. Is a good Muslim somebody who comes to the masjid 5 times a day and prays in jama'ah? Great. Is your definition of a good Muslim somebody who comes for Jum'ah and the other daily prayers can be prayed at home? Great. Is your definition of a good Muslim somebody who goes for Eid Salah and the rest is optional? Great. Again, I'm not here to impose a value judgment, but I want you to ask these questions as to what you define a good person to be and who you are in relation to this. Every time you're asking a question about somebody else, ask who you are. What are the things you're looking for? What's your temperament like? Are you the type of person who gets angry easily? Are you the type of person who laughs a lot, who likes to joke around, who likes to tease? Well, that tells you a lot about the person you're going to be trying to get married to, right? If you like to joke around and tease a lot, that person needs to be able to take a joke. So you need to know who you are, what your personality is like. If you're the dead serious type of person and you're talking to somebody who's always joking, there might be an issue sometime because you're like dead serious and you're never laughing at a joke. And the other person's like, what's wrong with you? I cracked so many jokes and not even a smile. A very simple question. Why do you want to get married? Right? Or what seems to be a simple question. Why do you want to get married? Are you getting married because hormones are kicking in and you just need to have a partner? Hey, totally legit reason. Nothing wrong with that. Are you getting married because you're getting pressured from the family? You don't really want to get married, but you're considering marriage because you got this external pressure on you? Are you getting married because you're stuck in a life situation and you feel like if I get married, this will help me escape that situation and move out? This is a very deep question to ask and explore, and tomorrow, inshallah, we'll explore many of the different answers Because all of those answers imply something about what you're expecting out of the marriage. If you're trying to get out of a particular situation and you get married, but the marriage was never designed to help you get out of the situation, you went from the hand into the fire, so to speak, from one tough situation to another tough situation, you're not going to be happy in that marriage. But you didn't ask yourself, why am I trying to get married? If you're getting married because, never mind, we'll talk about this tomorrow, inshallah. I started to give some examples, and I'm like, this may not be the right time. All right, so you want to get married. Great. Are you ready to be married? That, again, is a deep question. Doesn't matter how much you want to get married. Are you ready to be married? There's a question of, I want to get married versus I have the ability to get married. Are you ready today, within a year, 5 years from now? When will you be able to move forward on that? And then we start exploring in a little bit more depth, inshallah. What are you looking for in that partner? Talk about the characteristics about that partner and why you're engaging in those characteristics specifically. Because it makes you think. All these questions hopefully will make you think. And the more you think about this, the more you think through this, then you're very conscientious and you're very intentional about your decision making, inshallah. So you've identified who you are, you talked about why you want to get married, you started thinking about the type of person you actually want to get married in, and you've identified a particular person that you're interested in. That's great. But that doesn't mean you're compatible. So what are the issues that you should look at to consider compatibility? You know, it's not just about interests. We talked about different interests being one of the main reasons why people ended up having conflicts in a couple, Muslim couple. But it's to do with family backgrounds, it's got to do with interests, it's got to do with a whole host of different things. And we'll explore that, inshallah. And as we explore all of that, one of the very important things that we'll engage in tomorrow is looking at red flags. Red flags are problems that when you're going through this process, if a red flag comes up, you want to stop and pause. Because this could be an indicator of something going wrong in the future. And that could lead to ultimately divorce. But even if you don't end up getting divorced, it could lead to a lot of problems within the marriage. And so you want to take that very seriously and hash it out now. Hey, you asked, for example, a question, and you get two different answers at two different times. And you ask yourself, hey, why did I get two different answers? You want to look that into deeper. I mean, I don't want to give away too much, but tomorrow we'll talk a lot more in depth about what type of answers and how you engage in all of this. But is that person just trying to give you an answer to please you? And so the first time they gave you answer A because they thought you wanted answer A. The second time you asked a question, they gave you answer B because they thought you wanted answer B. But that tells me I don't really know what this person thinks on this question. They're simply feeding me what they think I want to know. I don't really know where they stand on this topic. And if I don't know where they stand on this topic, after marriage, the reality will come to show. They'll obviously at that time tell you, well, this is what I really think. I actually wanted option C, which is totally not what you wanted. And then you start getting into a fight. So there are a whole host of red flags. We'll be spending quite a bit of time in that. I mean, we have this quote on the screen here from a divorced man when he says, when I look back, the red flags that I overlooked or missed, which were very much in my face, yet I totally overlooked them. I knew early on that in terms of my relationship with her, that those issues were there, yet I didn't place much weight to them. Maybe because I was just so eager and intent to proceed. I was just rushing through it. And unfortunately, this is not an isolated quote. This quote represents a whole host of people. I'm not a clinician. I'll come to a lot of the discussion tomorrow more from the research side of things and theory. And Maryam will She actually has a practice. She's a clinician. She'll talk to you about the practical examples she sees in her practice day to day. I tell you, this is not something isolated at all. It is a very unfortunately common thing for men and women, that it was totally in my face. Going into it, I knew this wasn't going to work out, but I walked into it anyway. So then we talk about, you know yourself, you know who you want to get married, you talked about compatibility, you look through the red flags, it's all good. Well, what is the process of getting married? Here in the United States, we're not talking about overseas. Overseas, you got 101 different relatives, you got a whole social construct, structure that works. But here, sometimes you don't know a lot of people. So what's the process? What is the Islamic way to get married? Is there one Islamic way? Are there multiple ways? How do I go about it doing this? Do I just go up to the guy or girl and just propose myself directly? Does that work? Is that legit? Do I have to talk to the parents? Do I talk to the imam? Can I just shoot a text? I mean, what's the process? And how do I engage in that process throughout? And we'll talk about that, inshallah, within our context here. So this sort of summarizes this quote that I talked about earlier, that marriage is serious. You have to go in with the mindset that marriage is hard work for anybody. And you have to have the tools to get through it. So if you could equip yourself with the tools, then you can do a better job at it. Take it seriously. Just like you go to college or you raise a baby, take it seriously. And at the end, we're also going to touch on a topic that sometimes we are afraid to discuss. You're talking to somebody, you're asking lots of questions, red flags come up, etc., and you decide this is not going to work out, which is great. You have found this issue before you got engaged or before you got married. So what if it's not going to work out? How do you break up in a good, honorable Islamic way? You're not here to turn people into enemies. You're not saying, oh, this person's bad. That's not the idea. Each person will have their pair, inshallah. Everybody's different. Sometimes we're incompatible. So what's the best way to mutually separate so that it doesn't leave you scarred and helps you, inshallah, that you can go on and look for your partner with the next person? So we'll talk about that as well, inshallah. We'll talk about different tools that you can utilize, because this workshop is one day. You need to engage in this thing on an ongoing basis. So what are the things you can read on, that you can reflect on? What are the things that you can do? One of the things that you can engage in is a course. So tomorrow is a workshop for those who are looking to get married. If you find somebody that you're interested in or you're already engaged in before you get married, we've developed this online course. It used to be an in-person course. We've developed this online. So the couple can walk through a lot of the issues that we discussed, plus a lot more, in a systematic fashion. The couples together. So it's totally individualized to the couple that they're doing it together. And they'll be doing it with somebody helping them. Did you want to speak to this? So Mariam's one of the counselors who actually works with folks who just sign up for the Prepare to Prayer, and she can talk about this more.
Assalamu alaikum. Thank you all for having us here. Prepare to Pair is something that has been a project a lot of work has been put into it. And we wanted to create this, this guide, right, that was a lot more interactive. It was with the notion that there are going to be communities where there might not be enough resources, enough Muslim therapists to say do premarital counseling, or there might be too much of a demand, right? Or there might be people who are getting very close, it's time sensitive, and they're not able to find a therapist within their time frames, right? So this course allows it to be an interactive, individualized program for each couple, right? So when they sign up, there's a number of different modules that you can see over there that are listed out, and it's materials that you can read. it's materials, exercises that you do with your potential partner. It is videos that you watch, right? And so you do this together with your partner, and you're able to work through certain issues that are, these issues are some of the biggest factors that lead to divorce. So we're hoping that we're creating an opening to have some real conversations on issues that you know, young people and people who are embarking on this journey, they might not know to even think about that, because how do you know about marriage until you've been in it, right? There's just you don't realize some of these things or the depth of these things. So I have heard in my therapy sessions, right, people who just figure or assume that they can wing it, right? We've got, mashallah, a very high functioning community. You've got people who might feel like, okay, I started a job and I didn't know how to do it and I was able to figure it out, right? But marriage has a lot more complications and there's a lot more at stake. And so we want to make sure that we're preparing people, right? People are going to college and they're learning skills and they're studying and they're taking exams in order for them to go into their professions. But what preparation are we giving to our kids for getting married? So this is what we're hoping with this. In addition to that, we're having, we're still kind of, so it'll be live and up and running probably by the end of the year. We just completed a pilot program, and so now we're tweaking that, the modality and everything. And so, yes, I would be one of the two counselors. We start off with an assessment, which the couple will get. They get to review the results about where they stand, and we get to review it with them, and then they do these materials, and then we can, at the end point, kind of follow up and help support them and help them work through some of those issues that they might not be seeing eye to eye on. Okay, so I look forward to hearing from you guys about this too, inshallah.
Is it end of the year? I thought they were going to launch next month. No?
Inshallah, yeah.
Okay. Well, in the next 2 months, inshallah, I'll launch. And as I've mentioned multiple times on our website, there's a ton of resources. Actually, there's a table back there. There's some brochures and postcards. Feel free to take those. But the rest of the books and the material is just for reference. But you can take a look at some of the books, some of the workshop materials that we've produced. Gives you an idea of some of the resources that are available, so you actually see it. But most of the stuff that we produce in terms of reports, toolkits, are online. They're freely available. We strongly encourage you to go to the website and utilize it, inshallah. And like as I said, we want people to be learning on a continuous basis. It's not just a one-time deal. So we do this one short article a day because everybody's busy. You can follow us on social media. You can join our email list. And emails, at least, I know young people sometimes don't like email. They're like, I don't check email. I know my kids don't. Like, why you email me? I don't check email. Well, okay, fine, social media for you. But for everybody else, I personally love email because at least I know it's definitely there. I'm not reliant on Facebook's algorithm, whether it will show up in my feed or not. So it's up to you. My final comment for tonight would be sign up for the resources so you can continuously benefit. Be a champion. We talk about igniting change in the community. So spread the message. If you're finding these resources useful, share them with other people. Ask them to go to the website, check out. There might be in tough situation, Muslim and non-Muslim. I've had many different community members come up and tell us how much they've shared. One of the community members shared it, some of the resources. For example, when 9/11 was coming around, we had the 9/11 anniversary. It was the 20th year anniversary this year. So we produced a whole series of resources on how this 9/11 commemoration would impact Muslim students in schools. How Muslims would be, there might be increased bullying of Muslim students. How perhaps even without the bullying, the way the teachers bring things up might negatively impact the Muslims. So we shared a whole lot of resources. And we encourage people to share it with their school administrators. And then we found the school administrators contacting us, school district administrators saying, you know what, I've taken this and I've shared this with all of the teachers in the school district. We're talking about all of the public school teachers here. So that's wonderful, but that's the whole idea. We want people to benefit. Imam Tahir Anwar, who's one of our advisors, who sits on the advisory council for the FYI in terms of when we have Islamic questions, he's one of the scholars that we go to, he's telling me about the suicide toolkit. He's like, you know, this is wonderful. His neighbor who's not a Muslim, one of their children were having challenges. And he said, hey, take a look at this. And they looked at it, and it's like, oh, it's got all this Islamic stuff in it, which it's like, oh, nice spiritual. But the rest of it was awesome. I loved it, and it really helped me. So think of it from that perspective. Share the resources. Use it for yourself, but also share it widely, inshallah. Remember, it's not just the individual. We want to impact the collective, the whole public health model. And of course, as always, with any nonprofit, support the FYI. Donate to us. Donations are always appreciated. With that, I'll stop because 30 minutes, Yusuf Bhai, on the dot. So I'm open to questions. I think Mariam's here as well. If you have any questions, comments, happy to address them, inshallah.
Jazakallah khair, Brother Nadeem and sister. Any question from the audience for any of the panelists here?
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Jazakumullah khair for coming here. Just a question, from the studies and statistics. I was just wondering, would you say out of, the data that you've collected, more divorces or issues are a result of compatibility differences, or of not being prepared, regardless of compatibility, to resolve issues in any marriage?
So that's an interesting question. Step on a wire, and turns out I disconnected everything. So I think there are two separate issues. It's not either or. So when you're discussing compatibility, you're talking about what are the things that help you work together or not, right? That is different than having the ability to talk about it. A lot of people will understand and recognize compatibility, but they still are not able to discuss it. Some people may recognize issues, but they never bring it up. And there are others who don't even know about compatibility per se, but because of their nature of communication and interaction, they're able to talk through things. So I don't think it's either or, it's two very different things. You need to understand compatibility, and then you need to know what to do with it and how to go about engaging it. So this is where, the Prepare to Pair course is going to raise the issues of compatibility, but then in a very structured fashion help you engage in that discussion. So, okay, what do you do about this? Is this a make or break situation? Sometimes young people can make a mountain out of a molehill. I'll give you my example, right? So then I don't have to ask for permission to share stories. I can give you personal examples. So when I was engaged in talking to my wife, at that time, not wife yet, of course. So we were talking, and she said she wanted to do med school. So I grew up in Toronto, by the way, Toronto, Canada. She grew up in Ohio. And so she was just outside of Toledo. I'm up in Toronto. And I was in grad school. I was doing my PhD at the time. And she said, well, I want to go to med school. I said, okay, and if I get into med school, then med school's like, 4 or 5 years, plus residency, plus this. So we might not be together for 6, 7 years. And I was like, wow, do I really want to, is this really marriage? Do I want to go forward with this? Is this something I should consider? And in my mind at the time, I said, okay, this looks like it's a no-go. Clearly you want to go med school, power to you. You go do med school. But I am still in the middle of my PhD. I can't quit. I have to finish this. It's going to take me, at that time, it's going to take me at least 3 years. So I was ready to call it off. Big issue for me. I talked to my dad about it, And it's like, Nadeem, why are you making a mountain out of a molehill? I was like, whoa, what do you mean? He's like, first of all, you've been really picky about who you want to get married to. You finally find somebody who checks off on every single mark that you have. And you're not going to find too many people with all of these characteristics that you've outlined. It's a few years. First of all, you don't even know if she's going to get into med school, she's going to accept that med school, she'll actually continue with all this. There's a whole lot of ifs there. And even if all of that comes to happen, let's say 6 years, 7 years, okay, maybe you'll graduate, you move close to her. Maybe she'll get into med school close to you. Maybe you'll actually be 6 years apart. 6 years is not a big deal when you think about 30, 40, 50 years of marriage together. And it made me realize that, you know what, I'm making a decision based on conjecture, that I've already decided she is in med school, she's already 6 years away from me, and this, that, and the other. Whereas there's a lot of uncertainty. And all of the good qualities I'm sort of trumping. And so I went back, we talked about it, and ultimately what happened was she didn't go to med school. So alhamdulillah, she ended up becoming a psychologist and decided to go into this route. We were not separated, any of that thing happened. And now when I think back was alhamdulillah for the advice that this is not as big a deal. So compatibility is there. You may list out 101 questions, but you sometimes need that external party to help advise how to navigate it and whether it is a big deal that should make or break, or maybe you overlook. Did I address the question?
Assalamu alaikum. I can't remember if you mentioned this in the PowerPoint, but will you tomorrow discuss like how to navigate using those other like online resources for looking like Hafardine and websites like that?
Quick answer is yes. Remember, one of the sections was the process. What's the process of engaging? So in that process part, we'll talk about all the different tools that are available, inshallah.
Assalamu alaikum. May I ask a question from a parent's point of view? So this is wonderful that we're educating our young people on how to navigate and find a compatible partner. But as we know, marriage is a union of two families, and marriage is a coming together of two cultures. Even if you're going to marry your next door neighbor or your auntie's daughter or son, it's coming together of two cultures. But now the cultures are different. How can we as parents support our children so the marriages really continue? Because I think we as parents can impact our children negatively as well. So I think we as parents need such kind of a workshop as much as our children do. So we can navigate how to live with each other and be supportive to our children, because they're struggling and we're struggling. And then it's like the blind, leading the blind. What would you advise for us as parents, so we can be good parents and lead our children forward, inshallah?
So when I think about just my experience of my own childhood and then what I see in the community now, the challenges that kind of come up are around what are the issues at hand, right? So the issues that are there for, say, my parents' generation might have been, for me, I got, there was issues of race, right, that were considered like a rule out, right? They should be Pakistani, or they should be Indian, or they should be Arab, and things like that. Or it could have been on a class basis, right? And it's what they're doing. Are they doctors or lawyers or engineers, right? And so these things, right, there might be some wisdom behind it, in that there might be this thing of, okay, there's a possibility that if you are from the same culture, the culture of the family that you're going into. But the reality is every family is different. You can have two cousins getting married and they end up in divorce because there are so many other issues that get neglected, right? So we make a lot of assumptions that you will have a good life if someone is from the same culture, or if someone is making a certain amount of money, or if someone has a certain profession, right? But what we need to do is we need to kind of, instead of having these kind of factors, really open up dialogue with your children about what are your values? What are the important things to be considered, right? So are we talking about women kind of seeking someone, a partner who's going to treat them with respect and kindness, right? And this also goes for the men, right? Having a woman, I think there's this stereotype of, you know, and especially when you're leading with pictures, right? It becomes, what are you promoting first, right? The first thing that is being put out there is that I need to be physically attracted to them, right? And I've heard of, and I've seen stories where someone is marrying someone who is so beautiful or so handsome, yet they're not really present. They're kind of not giving to their partners, right? And so it becomes this imbalance in this relationship, which is kind of unfair. So what kind of, instead of answering the question for your child, really having these conversations about what kind of marriage would you like? What kind of relationship would you like? And this is what I would love for you. And you guys explore on that together, right? And then it helps both of you guys to then be educated in this process, because we have candidates that can come from, you know, the children can find them on their own, whether it's online platforms or it's going to college together or seeing people in the community, or you have parents who might also be, you know, being told, okay, we know someone who might be a candidate for your child, right? So being on the same page has to come by having those conversations. And if the parents don't open up these conversations, children are going to struggle with it, right? I remember being an awkward teenager that wanted to have no conversations about marriage. I didn't know how to do it, right? I was young, right? So parents that do it, then it helps it, and it relieves some of the anxiety and the taboos around it, right? The assumptions that people make, right? My parents will never accept anyone that I'll bring, and so then that can lead to a lot of unhealthy circumstances, right? In that desperation, right? People then run, if they're feeling that's going to be oppressive, this process is going to be oppressive, it's more likely that they might run into something that's haram, right? So we do have to, as parents, be really open about having these conversations with our kids. Nadeem, did you want to add to that?
So I guess what I'll say is, you're right, this is a gap in the sense that our workshop tomorrow is targeted to the young people. And we'll raise a lot of these questions. Hopefully the young people go home and raise up with their parents and their eyes are open to addressing these issues. But it's not, the workshop itself is not addressed to the parents. And in terms of educating the parents, I think a separate forum needs to be established where we can have something more direct for the parents. I take that, I'll make a note of that, inshallah. Jazakumullah khair. Other questions? So I'll just before I give the mic back, so I'll hang around. If somebody has questions directly for myself or Maryam, we'll just probably hang around by the table. Feel free to come by and ask, inshallah.
Yeah, we have 10 minutes for Salah, so inshallah we can end this program. Jazakallah khair, Brother Nadeem and Sister Maryam. Hope it was beneficial for everybody. Alhamdulillah, we had this event tomorrow. We had opened the registration, and we got an overwhelming response. We have only 100 seats, and 170 entries came in. So we are limiting the entry to just 100 people because it's a workshop. We'll have some activities among the participants, which will be again run by Brother Nadeem and Sister Maryam tomorrow at 9:30 here, inshallah. Jazakumullah khairan. If anybody have any questions, comments, you can meet Brother Nadeem and Sister Maryam. They have the desk over there. Feel free to collect the pamphlets and referential books which Brother Nadeem has used in his presentation, inshallah. Jazakumullahu khairan wa assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح الله أكبر الله أكبر لا